Hello, welcome to Have a Go, and I'm Alan. Today, hopefully get the shims onto this so that I can put it on here. And I'm going to drill the holes for the jib screws. However, I'm not going to be able to install the jib screws permanently because I don't have the the key stock for the gib itself yet. As it turns out, the 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch key stock is a right pain to get hold of. Right, we'll start with the heavy stock first. If my experience with fitting the shims for the carriage is any indication, this is going to be an absolute pain in the bum. I'm also going to trim the bottom off this, as I found with the carriage shims that it's preferable to have the shim be a little bit smaller than the pad it's on, because otherwise the shims stick out and they hurt every time your fingers press on them. It's about centered. There has to be a quieter way of doing this. Good tip for getting bolts started: if you're having trouble, then put them in reverse until you feel the thread drop down into the thread of the bolt drop down into the thread of the nut or whatever you're doing it up into. Alright, let's try that. Okay, it goes with this, but not on the carriage itself, so I'm wondering, the clamp pads are hitting the casting of the carriage. Which means I'm going to have to either file down the clamp pads or file down the casting. I'll see how much meat there is left on the casting before I go mucking around too much. Because castings are rough and always need some kind of fettling, so it may be possible that I've left too much meat on the casting by accident. I'm actually glad I did take that off. I hadn't realised that those were still rough. Always amazing just how good a stone is at flattening something. I might be going crazy here, but I find that for this file, the smooth side is good at smoothing out rough surfaces and also taking away a small amount from a flat surface, while the rasp side is very good at taking away a lot from a smooth surface, but it tends to catch on a rough surface. So what I just did was I smoothed this out a bit with the flat side. Now that it's flatter, hopefully I can take some meat off with the rough side. Another thing, you don't tighten the first one all the way down. You get all the screws in loosely tight, then you go around and tighten them. The rough casting here is catching on this part at the end, so I need to sand that back. First though, I shall put the shim stopper on. The location of these holes isn't, you don't have to be too precise, but at the same time you want them close to the centre so that the thread has a decent amount of meat to grab onto. I should probably take the steel jibs off so I don't drill through them by accident. Alright, I managed to get the hole a bit closer to the meat of the casting, but the proof of the pudding will be in the tasting, so we'll see when I tap it. As well as these being a much better quality set than the first set I bought, I also like how the case is nice and small. It's not like opening a giant briefcase on your bench. Given that these holes aren't all the way through, I'm going to have to stop after each tap, or possibly even in the middle of some of these, to empty all the chips out of the bottom of the hole. The top of this casting is starting to look a bit like Swiss cheese. Right, that's for the carriage lock hole, which is a 6mm bolt. The two outer ones, however, are 5mm for the jib screws, and so they will require a 4.5mm hole. Right, these are not blind holes, so I can add some cutting oil. These, however, will be the jib screws. They need to have a pointy end, and as you can see, they do not. So, I'll put a nut on them, as they're going to need one anyway. Plus, the nut will also provide stability and support for what I'm about to do, because I'm planning on using the belt sander to grind the flat ends of these into a little pointy bit, that if I just hold it in a pair of vice grips and hold it to the sander, it'll be a faceted pointy bit, it won't be smooth. So put it in the drill. Is stable there because, as well as the head of the bolt at the bottom, I've also got the nut in the middle here supporting it. So I'm going to have this on at the same time I'm holding it to the grinder or belt sander. Just occurred to me, angle grinder would probably do a nice job of smoothing out the casting on the carriage there where it's catching. But anyway, the next one, after the jib is installed there, then this will be in the final position in terms of where it's going to sit on that carriageway. So I'll be able to drill a hole through there and a matching hole in the carriage itself. Then I can install the feed screw, which will have a handle on it, which will turn the handle, and this will go in and out, you know, like a real lathe. So I've gone as far as I can with that. So the next stage will be to get some sheet metal to make clamps to sit on there. And once I've sorted that, I can get on to machining this. Now this is rather scary for me, but, well, not the screws, they're normal. I've picked up an angle grinder along with some cutting discs that are rated for cutting metal. The idea being I'm going to take the top off this And rather than spend 2 hours filing, hopefully use this to, trim them down a bit. Now let's see what we get. Handle, gonna need that. Handle grinder itself, a wrench, manual, and a cutting disc that the man told me was good for scraping paint and rust, but not much else. So I'll put that back in the box. It says here, this power tool is intended to function as a grinder, sander, wire brush, polisher or cut-off tool. Second point. Operations such as grinding, sanding, wire brushing, polishing or cutting off are not recommended to be performed with this power tool, despite saying right above there that that's what it's for. I hope Bosch's cut-off discs are better than their countersinking bits. Put that there to catch any flying grit and whatnot. Also got a big pair of gloves. Yes, angle grinders scare me. Also got my canvas apron on. Okay, I'm going to need my hearing protection as well as the hard plastic visor. Right, now for the litmus test. Oh, no wonder I'm having trouble. I just reread that part in the book. The Gibbs side clamp is inch wide stock like I used. This side is supposed to be 1¾ inch, not 1 inch. No wonder it doesn't fit. All that trouble. The book specifies 5/8 of an inch wide. Much help that is. Times 5.4 equals 15.875. Right, I'm going to make 3 of these. So I'll measure this out from the same stock. Make this one a bit wider to allow for the saw cut. The bandsaw seemed to think that cutting these was insultingly easy for it. Someone's listening to Pink Floyd out there, comfortably numb by the sound of it. Hope it doesn't get me a copyright strike. Right, smooth as butter. Right, next problem, these little things. Right, I don't have a box of shame, but this is the first candidate for it. Sorting out this is the next order of business. I'm doing this to separate the wear pads before I start sanding this time. So I'm wondering if that lack of separation was why the cross slide ways gave me so much trouble. Tell you what, I'll put the radio on and come back to you in a bit, hey? I'm using this offcut and not the ways on the lathe because I don't really feel like unclamping and reclamping this all the time. Yes, I did do this before, however the sanding has reduced the level of the wear pads enough that they drop down to the base of this cutout. So I need to make this cutout even deeper to compensate for that. And I really wish I could just use the bandsaw for this. I found a book published in about 1900, 1910 originally, and it actually mentions scraping. I found a book that mentions scraping. It's the book Metalworking by Paul N. Hasluck. And he actually mentions that when you're scraping, at first you use the file judiciously to get rid of any big patches, and then once you pass the point of filing is when you bring the actual scraper into work. So it looks like I was okay to use that file after all. The book Metalworking by Hasluck touches on a lot of topics, all the way from casting metal, in which he actually recommends making your own alloys because then you can control it, but that was also in the 1900s, through to how furnaces should be constructed out of bricks, blacksmithing work, through to lathe work and fine decorative work and all kinds of metalworking. So if you're covering that many topics, you can't cover them in detail, but it's good for getting a broad idea. Like an encyclopedia, think of it as metalworking. One of the topics he actually covers is the proper height for a vise. It should be elbow height. The top of the vise should be about the height of your elbow, and I'm pleased to report mine is. So, Paul, you were more right than you think when you talk about the lazy option with the flat disc before the actual scraping. They were way ahead of you in the 1900s, except they used the technology of their time, which was a file and not a flat disc. And as much as Paul may dislike it, the file has the advantage also of being more easily able to deal with these narrow confines in these channels. Sorry, Paul. They don't talk about Prussian blue though. They mention using red chalk and then fine red ochre or ochre or whatever you pronounce it. Again, working with what they had, I suspect. That is after the first bit of spotting on the surface plate. So as you can see, it's already pretty good. I wonder how familiar Grandad would have been with this process. I wonder if he did scraping with this vise as well. I forgot that book again. I'll file this down first. I am trying to be careful to keep the file flat across both surfaces when I'm doing that. Bingo! How's that? I'd say that's probably good enough to proceed with. Okay, the bandsaw keeps slipping off. I have a strong suspicion it's because I was giving it WD-40 and not actual cutting oil. I'm going to go over it, degrease it, clean it up tomorrow because I'm not doing it today. Back to the old ways.